Hi, welcome everyone to our live. This is the first one for 2023, the first of many. But before we dive in, let's just do a quick mic test. Make sure you can hear me okay, see me okay. So if somebody could just give me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that. Also, this is being broadcasted via StreamYard to a number of different platforms. So if you make a comment, I won't be able to see your name unless you give StreamYard permission. You can give your permission. Don't, not a problem. We'll still see the comment. So, okay, I can see people starting to sign in. So, okay, so let's get going. Let's get going. So, 2023 is here already. And what I want to do is kick off this year with an amazing guest today who I actually have the privilege of calling a friend as well. He's a leadership coach. However, prior to starting his coaching practice, he was 27 odd years in the Navy SEALs. And I'm going to let him give you more details. So without further ado, let me introduce everybody to Will.
Happy New Year.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I think I was wondering if everyone hung up when you said leadership coach. Oh, yeah, in this one.
Oh, yeah, engagement's just gone down, right? But you are a leadership coach with a big difference, and I'm excited to talk about that today. But, do you want to kick off telling people who you are?
Sure. So my name is William Branum. I spent 26 years in the SEAL teams. That's actually a little bit of a lie. I only spent 23 of my 26 years in the Navy in the SEAL team. So I spent 23 of my 26 years in the SEAL teams. And the reason that it was only 23 out of 26 is because I made some tactical errors. We can talk about that later. But while I was in the SEAL teams, let's see, I have a tremendous amount of lessons learned, most of them through failure, not through success, which is a mistake that most people have or think. They believe that they are successful because of the successes. They're probably more successful because of the failures that they have. And I have a lot of failures to draw from. So that's where a lot of the coaching and the leading that I have done, failures in leadership, struggles in leadership is really where I've found a lot of my success.
That's where the learning is, right?
Yeah.
Because everything that's working, we already know it's working. Now, two things. Before, because I'm sure somebody's going to ask the question, get naked. What does that mean? Let's just put everybody out of their misery from the get-go. What does that mean?
You know, just for you, I wore a very small logo that says "Get Naked" because it's a professional audience. So, but I know that not everyone is always professional. So naked, it has a lot of meanings, a lot of meanings for me. So originally, when I retired from the SEAL teams, I had a lot of baggage. What I call baggage, I don't call it PTSD or anything like that. I call it baggage because, you know, some of it's stuff that I just put in there and I carry it around. Some of it other people carried around. And we all have some sort of baggage in our life. And so getting naked was really about taking that baggage off, taking that armor, taking that ego that I was hiding behind off, setting it in the corner, exposing myself, becoming vulnerable so I could find the healing that I needed. And then later on, I turned naked into an acronym. And so it's an acronym. It's, you know, I call it the 5 SEAL secrets of success. And it's a culmination of my 26 years in the military of service. And so it's an acronym. So the N stands for never quit. The A is accept failure. The K is to kill mediocrity. The E is expose your fears. And the D is to do the work. And you have to do those things every single day.
Nice.
And I can go much deeper down that rabbit hole if you like.
Totally, right? So not only have you the leadership coaching practice, but you also have a couple of other businesses, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I have a CBD and supplements company, mostly because I got into the CBD world because CBD was a modality that helped turn down this noise in my head so I could have more positive self-talk, which really helped me get where I am today. Again, it was a lot of struggle, a lot of failure after I retired from the military. If you've ever seen the movie The Avengers, where Thanos like snaps his fingers and half the world's population vanishes all at once, that's the way I felt when I retired from the military. And what I've actually found in my new professional life is that there are a tremendous amount of people that go through the exact same thing, where, whether it's a CEO of a company he sells for $5 billion. And I do have a friend that did that. He went through the exact same process. Or a professional athletes who they were, rock stars one day and the next day they're nothing. They're just regular Joes. Or, I have a friend who played for Metallica, and he refused to get the medicine, and so he can't tour around Europe. So he has to, have to do a completely different, change his entire career. So he has to reinvent himself and all that other stuff. So it's lots of people, most people go through it, and I call them generally life transitions. We all go through some sort of life transition, whether you have like a tremendous an illness in the family. I have a friend, he just texted me yesterday. His wife was having weird headaches and like missing memory. They lived in Costa Rica, had an amazing life, and then they flew back to Florida just to get a brain scan, and they brought enough clothes for like 3 days. She had a massive brain tumor, like on like the stem of her brain. And so they were like, you're not going anywhere. We have to remove this thing. We have all this other stuff. And so that was a huge, like, traumatic event in their life that happened. And so, again, CBD was this modality that helped me turn down the noise in my head so I could, get naked, expose my fears, do all those other things that helped me become a better person and helped me with the healing that I needed to go through.
Yeah, because I love this, because a lot of us as leaders and even coaches, right? Leadership coaches as well, we don't face our own fears. We don't really get, to use your terminology, get naked with ourselves. Yet we're trying to coach others and get them to do something we haven't done ourselves. So that's something that and that's one of the reasons I was like, you got to come on my lives, right? You and
Yeah.
I have known each other a couple of years now, but I've watched your journey. The honesty, because here's the thing: leaders expect, or people. Let me rephrase that. People expect leaders to be on their game 24/7.
Yeah.
Never have a bad moment. Never have any type of, for lack of a better word, setback, bad moment. It's almost like, no, you're not allowed to have that, because you are the leader and you have to fit this perfect box. Well, there's no such thing as a perfect leader, right?
No, absolutely not. And pretty much my entire life, from childhood to my adult life till today, I've always been afraid to show weakness, especially in the SEAL teams where you're just a bunch of alpha males, expecting the best out of everyone on the team. Like, you're expected to perform every single day. And it wasn't until it was a couple of years before I retired, a senior SEAL leader, this sort of started me down this journey anyway, at least got me thinking about it. A senior SEAL leader who I respected tremendously one day was brave enough to ask for help. He's like, hey, I'm struggling with some stuff. I need to go get help. And I was like, oh, you're going to get eaten alive. And people actually respected him more. He was already well respected, but they respected him more for being vulnerable and going forward and said, hey, I just want everyone to know I'm struggling with some stuff. I need to go get some help, and I'm going to go get some help. And then when I'm done, I'll be back. And he was a better person. And I learned lots and lots of lessons from that. I was still not ready to get naked myself. I was still not ready to show weakness or vulnerability or anything like that. It took me a long time after the fact to do that. But you mentioned something about leaders. And I think one of the biggest failures in leadership is that most leaders fail to lead the most important person first, and that's themselves. Before
Yeah.
you can lead other people, you have to learn how to lead yourself. And once you learn to lead yourself, then you can start leading other people.
Why do you think that is? Is it they don't know how to, they refuse to, or they literally don't think there's anything wrong with them?
I think some of it could be I just this is something that happens in the military. I'll start in the military and then
Yep.
I'll transition to the corporate world. So in the military, you are advanced to leadership positions based on your potential to do a good job in that leadership position,
Okay.
based on previous performance. I was thrust into leadership positions that I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't have the tools to do it. So when I got into that position, I worked extra hard. I was always uncomfortable. I was only just like one step in front of the guys that I was leading, but that's all I needed. But I took everything I had to stay in front of them because they were hard charges. They were very smart. And people think about Navy SEALs as just like brute strength and whatever. It's actually a very cerebral organization. We take a lot of time and effort to think about the right way to do things. And if we fail along the way, we figure out ways to improve what we're doing. In the corporate world, oftentimes people are hired or put into leadership positions not based on their potential, but based on what their resume says.
Yep.
And so they have zero leadership training. They may know nothing about what's going on in that organization, but because of some piece of paper and how they interviewed, they got this job. But they don't know how to lead people. I have clients that were really good at growing a business. They are very good entrepreneurs. But once they started hiring people, they don't know how to lead them. And so I'm teaching them how to lead their people. Or actually, I say, you're not a good leader. You pretty much suck at leadership. You run the company, hire someone that is good at leadership. And
Yep.
then I'll help train them in the best way to take care of the company and take care of the employees to give you a better product on the backside.
You're
So
right. And also in the corporate world, generalizing statement, but you're right. It's how did you interview on the day type of thing, right? And often, especially if it's sales, people promote the top salesperson, not because they're the best person for that leadership, team lead role, whatever the case may be, because they're the best salesperson. And we make the mistake thinking, I was one of those people. I was top in the top 3 out of 200, and they promoted me to management because I was top sales, not 'cause, and I hated managing. You got everybody that knows me, they know I'd much rather, and I don't, it's not something I enjoy, right? Yes, that motivational piece and stuff like that. Yes, strategy, but on a day-to-day basis, it's something I don't enjoy. So I have that delegated. But a
right.
lot of people see that as weakness. So many people have probably heard me say that and think, what? Right? So they've already probably formed their opinion. But I think it comes back to what you just said. It's the fear of looking in the mirror and getting uncomfortable and getting naked with themselves.
Right.
So I want to dive in.
I want to talk
Go on.
about that
Oh,
that
go,
piece
go
right
for it.
there. You and I've seen this multiple times where organizations hire the top salesperson, just what you're saying, or promote them into a leadership role. They don't know anything about leadership. They are awesome at sales.
Yep.
Leave them at sales unless they want to promote into a leadership role. And but that's a high level of maturity that honestly I probably didn't have until I'm able to like step outside of an organization, look at it holistically rather than being emotionally attached to being inside the organization and kind of making decisions that way, because everyone wants to make more money. But quite honestly, if you're an awesome salesperson, this is the other thing I see. CEOs oftentimes get jealous that the salesperson is making more money than them.
Yeah.
And that is a mistake, because that salesperson is the person that's actually paying your salary. They're paying their salary. And then companies will go in and they'll adjust the pay chart and things like that. Reward the person that's paying your salary, the person that's keeping the lights on. Like that's the lifeblood. And then get that person to train other people in the organization how to do what they're doing. Look at what they're doing, study what they're doing. Sometimes it's just they're just a unicorn and they're like just 2 or 3 times better than everyone else. That's okay. Learn the lessons from that person that's awesome at sales, and then train everyone else in what they're doing. Study what they're doing, and then train everyone else in what they're doing because they're doing something right, and then promote them for that.
Yeah, and I think also just on that flip side to those people that are listening today or whether they watch this on repeat, you want to step into management, a lot of companies or a lot of careers is you do this and then you become a manager, or maybe there's a team lead role, transition role in there and things like that. But that's not the only way to grow your career,
Right.
right? So, just because the norm is go up to get growth, this perception is you got to manage people. Reality is that's not true. And in my personal case, if I'd known that, I definitely wouldn't have gone down that route.
Right.
Right. Now, what I also, before we dive in, I want to touch on something. The A lot of people, whether it's military, right, Marines, British Armed Forces, whatever, replace that with whatever you want to replace it with, right? They come from an environment where they have, and correct me if I'm wrong, good job you're in Hawaii and I'm over here, else you'd probably throttle me if I get this bit wrong. But everybody it's been drilled into them, follow orders, right? There is chain of command, obviously, but there's also, and I know you'll touch on it when we start diving into the um, 5 secrets, but they come from that world, and 100% I understand why that your world is like that. They transition into the civilian world, corporate world, whatever you want to call it, right? But that mindset stays as if they're still in the army, and they struggle. And one of the things that, once I got to know you, as I've got to know you over these last couple of years, you've made that transition really well, right? You've made that transition well enough, right? But we're live, so we can't say it all right. Relatively well, right? You're holding it together
Relative.
for this hour, right?
It's a process for sure. Yeah.
It's a process, right? But why do you think that is? Why do you think some people have been able to transition and then share their expertise like you're doing, and others have struggled?
I think so one of the things is in the SEAL teams, we are an unconventional force.
Okay.
We think differently than conventional army, conventional military. We operate differently. We promote a lot of free thinking in the SEAL teams. You know, even though I'm the most senior guy, when we're working on a mission, we're planning an operation, everyone gets buy-in from the most junior guy who just showed up at the team, who hasn't really earned his stripes yet. He still has a voice in the organization because he has a perspective that no one else has. So, for example, I was the leader. I was a platoon chief in one of my platoons in 2005. No, I'm sorry, 2007. I had a guy who was a doctor on the outside world. He had his own practice, and then he, closed his practice down, joined the military because he wanted to be a SEAL and post 9/11 SEAL and go to combat and fight for freedom. In that same platoon, I had another guy who worked for NASA. He was a rocket scientist, and he also left his position at NASA, joined the military, and they joined the military as enlisted guys, not as officers who make decisions, as like the lowly, the doers of the deed. And so these guys showed up and we're doing work, and I find out their background, and I'm like, I'm not qualified to lead you. What actually I am, because this is my world. But they would come in and they would have a very different perspective of how to attack a problem than I would. And so we promote free thinking in the military. But the other thing in the SEAL teams is you also have a bunch of very hard-headed dudes that don't ever want to be wrong. And they all have an opinion, and their opinion is right. And they're right. And they're not wrong. And I'm not wrong either, even if we disagree on something. But my job as a leader is to convince them that this is the right way. Or my job as a leader is to listen to what they have to say and then find some sort of compromise somewhere in the middle. Leadership isn't about giving orders and expecting, people to follow them. There is such a thing in the military as a stupid order or an illegal order. Like if it doesn't make sense, I don't have to follow that order. So the right thing to do is to listen to my subordinates, to my junior people, and make the right decision for the organization at the time. And then, you know what, if we do what they say, we come up with their plan and it was a complete failure, we have an after action review process where we look at everything that happened on the mission or on the operation or on the whatever, on the event. We analyze it, we figure out what went right, what went wrong, and then we fix the things that went wrong so that we can do it even better the next time. Most people are just stuck in the status quo mediocrity of like my way or the highway, and I don't need to listen to you, and I'm the man or I'm the woman, and this is my company or whatever. I'm the boss. And I have been in that role where I'm like, just go figure it out. And that was one of my biggest regrets as a leader, where I had a guy come to me. I was teaching sniper school, and he was a communications guy. He was trying to figure out the radios and the computers where we're sending, this was pre-iPhone for sure. There was certainly no FaceTime back then, but we're like taking pictures and video and sending that over, secure satellite communications like you might see in a movie, but a little bit different, a little more antiquated. And he was like, I can't figure this out. And I'm like running the sniper course. And he's like, I don't know how to, like, I can't figure this thing out. And I'm like, you're the comms guy. Go figure it out. I'm busy doing other stuff. What I didn't hear at the time is he was actually asking for help.
Yeah.
And the help could have come from one of the students who was a better comms guy. Like they were there to learn how to shoot and do some other stuff, but there might have been some guys in that class that were better at that thing that we were trying to teach than he was. And so what I should have done as a leader is stop what I was doing, listening to what I said, and said, why don't you go see if one of the students is really good at this thing that we're trying to do? Because that is the epitome of like, you're in this leadership role of like, everyone wants to be what you are, but you can be vulnerable enough to go down to the students and say, hey, does anyone know how to do this really, really well? And then actually even have them teach the class is totally fine. Take your ego and get it out of the way and provide the best service possible.
That's so true. So this is a really good segue into, let's talk about these 5 secrets.
Okay, so I've coined the term. I've coined lots of terms. Apparently, get naked, 5 SEAL secrets, so the original 5 SEAL secrets was really the acronym of get naked. But then someone asked me to give a talk about leadership, and I had already started kind of building this. The 5 SEAL secrets of leadership. And I'm actually in the process of co-authoring a book talking about building high performing teams and leadership and things like that. And it's based off of these 5 SEAL secrets of leadership. So I'll go over them very quickly, but I reference being in a gunfight as the sort of the framing of leadership. And oftentimes it's about training my new officers, my new leaders who have never been in a gunfight. They've never really been in a leadership position. When you put them into a very stressful gunfight type scenario where it's life or death, stress goes very high. And I'm not saying this is right for everyone, but for every organization. But I think inoculating stress into the leadership environment to train people on how to become better leaders, how to make better decisions under stress is a good thing. And so I frame everything around, being in a gunfight. So I'll use, leadership lesson, Navy SEAL leadership lesson number 1 is, or Navy SEAL secret number one on leadership is multitask like a Navy SEAL. So in a gunfight, there's three things you have to do very, very well. Only three things. You have to be able to shoot, you have to be able to move, and you have to be able to communicate. Those are the only things that matter in your life. So when you're on the battlefield and the enemy engages you, you have to return fire, you have to suppress the fire, you have to communicate what's going to happen as a leader, where what you want the team to do and what direction you want them to move, and then you have to move. So before you can, and I can go much deeper into this, but and I'll apply it to the corporate world.
Please, yeah.
So I will. So to shoot, the first thing you do is you take cover, you look around, you see where your team is, you make sure that none of your teammates stopped in front of you, because we have actually killed our own people accidentally because a guy took cover. He just saw the target. He didn't actually see if one of his guys was in front of him, and this was at night and things like that. So weird things happen at night, and so you have to be extra cautious. So target pops up, you have to take cover as if it was real, and this is all a training environment. You look, see where your team is, make sure that no one stopped in front of you, make sure that you didn't stop in front of someone else. You need to do a 360-degree check of the area. Okay, I'm good. I'm behind cover. There's the enemy. Is there going to be any collateral damage if I engage the enemy from this position or this particular enemy? No? Okay, now I can look down my sights and I can start squeezing the trigger. I start engaging the target. At some point, the leader makes a decision. Hey, we need to, he makes a call, and he repeats that call over and over. And for me, communication is a two-way thing. All communication is two ways. If it's only one way, it's preaching. If it's communication, it's two ways. And so I might make a call, something like this: break right, break right. And so I'll yell that several times in a direction to the guy to my one side or the other. And he will eventually have to stop shooting. He will look at me, and then he'll repeat the call back to me. That's two-way communication. Now, he had to stop shooting before he could communicate with me, because you can only do one of those things really, really well. The same thing when it's time to move. When it's time for me to move, I have to stop shooting. I have to look to where I want to go, probably where the last guy was, and move to that piece of cover or something like that. And I get up and I can move very quickly. Now I can yell and scream or whatever while I'm moving, and I can maybe point my gun in a direction and start just sort of spray and pray, but I'm not being an effective communicator, and I'm not being an effective marksman. I'm not effectively engaging the target. So to multitask like a Navy SEAL, there's no such thing as multitasking, is the bottom line. You have to do one thing at a time. If you're trying to do more than one thing at a time, then you're going to fail. You're not going to do either one of them very well. And so to kind of put that into perspective, corporate world, you're in your office and you're writing an email to a customer or to the team, or, a letter to the board. And I come in and I have an issue that I'm struggling with, and I need your help to solve this problem. And I say, Suki, I got this thing and it's over here and we're doing the thing and the other thing, but I'm having trouble. And you're like, okay, yeah, check. And you're listening to me and you're still typing. You're not doing either one of those things very well. You're kind of half-assed listening to me, and you're kind of half-assed understanding what words you're putting on that paper, but you're not doing either one of those things well. So to multitask like a Navy SEAL, you need to either say, hold on, William, just a minute. Let me finish my thoughts here, and then I can listen to you. Or you stop what you're doing and you give me 100% of your attention so that you can actually provide me feedback to help me solve the problem that I'm trying to solve. And so, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, multitasking is worn as a badge of honor, right? It's like,
Right.
oh, I can multitask, and you see these job descriptions come through, right? And they want people that can multitask. And it's when it's in. I used to be quite proud that I could multitask. Now I know I wasn't multitasking. I was kind of don't know what I was doing, right? But it wasn't focusing on the job at hand, because you have this long list and you're going, okay, I'm do this, and at the same time I'm answering the phone call, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and yet your attention has gone all
Right.
over the place and nobody's got it clearly. But coming back to what I was going to say, So many leaders pride themselves on multitasking, and here you are saying, that ain't the thing to do.
No, because you're doing a half-assed job at everything. You do a half-assed job at everything. Now, there's nothing that says you can't be working on multiple projects
Yep.
in the same time frame, but you can't work on like, an email series and and train your sales team at the same time.
Yeah.
You have to stop doing one, focus on the other, stop doing, focus. And if you do like time blocking, nothing, you don't do anything else. You just put your blinders on. Don't bother me. This is my time to do my stuff. I can help you in a minute.
Just, something, a thought just came to my mind. A lot of people that go back to that multitasking piece, right? Badge of honor. That's also busyness for them. And I guess what I'm thinking, I'm just trying to articulate my thoughts here. But as you were talking, I thought of those people that are always running late, always busy, always have this really low, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. How much of that is them just feeling busy and important?
Yeah.
And a lot of leaders, I mean, not just leaders, but we're talking about leaders today, fall into that trap.
It's really that dopamine response. Like,
Yep.
I'm so great because I'm doing so many things. Look at me. It's your ego again. Screw your ego. I can say that because I have a gigantic ego, and I have to say screw my ego a lot,
Yep.
and just focus on one thing at a time. And it's really, really hard to do. I didn't know I was ADHD until I went to I got a treatment for traumatic brain injury and all sorts of other stuff. And they're like, wow, dude, your IQ is really high, but your attention is like at the bottom. Like, everything scores are high and everything that was attention was way down here. And they're like, yeah, okay. You struggle with some stuff. I'm like, oh, I thought I was just dumb. I had no idea. So at least now I know. So now I take extra effort to focus on a very specific thing. So for example, writing a book, I have to block the time out. I'm going to write one paragraph a day. That might turn into 10, but I'm doing one thing very specifically a day. And
And if you're going to
nothing else
manage,
matters. Yeah,
yeah, if
go
you're
ahead.
going to manage yourself like that, you've got to accept that. So if we just say multitasking doesn't work, okay, I, as a leader, am no longer going to multitask. I then also got to make sure that I don't expect my team to be multitasking and to do two things at the same time, right?
Right,
Because
right.
there's that contradiction in its own.
Yeah, I mean, I was multitasking yesterday. I was on a Zoom call with a guy. We were talking business, but I was also texting someone else, in a kind of a sales call way, and I only heard about a third of what the guy that I was talking to was saying.
Yeah.
And I heard the words, but I had no idea what he said.
Yeah, you didn't register
And I
them.
would have to say, "Can you hold on? I was sorry. I was typing. I was texting. What did you say?" And so, like, it just continued to remind me that you can't. There is no such thing as multitasking. And I think I'm pretty good at it, and I know I'm not. I know none of us are,
Yeah.
because our brains just don't work that way.
Yeah, because what in essence, what you were saying to that is, sorry, I wasn't present. I
Right.
wasn't being present to, and
Sorry, you weren't important enough to me to pay attention to you.
yeah, yeah. But we all do it.
Yeah.
But we all do it. So, okay. So what's the second?
Leadership lesson number 2 is leaders get no bullets. And going back to being in a gunfight, training a young leader to make really hard decisions in a gunfight. So the example is I have these brand new Navy SEAL leaders. They've just graduated training. They are fired up. They're motivated. They're ready to go. And we go and we do these gunfight scenarios, and the targets pop up and they start shooting at us, and we take cover and we start engaging the targets. And those young leaders, they might be the best shot on the team, and they're just like laying lead down range, and they're putting all the targets down, and they're doing a great job, and they think they're doing a great job. But what is that leader's job? Is his job to shoot, or is his job to lead? So, and I'll give you a corporate example of this in a minute. And so, me as a senior leader, the way that I train my junior leaders is I will position myself next to them in this, we're, a bunch of guys walking in the room. I'll position myself right next to that leader, and I will never make a call, not one time, because if I'm making the call, I'm taking his ability to decision make away. So in the corporate environment, if I'm trying to train a new leader and it's my company or I'm whatever in the company, I may say, Suki, you're going to run this meeting today. I'm not going to say a word. I may be there next to you taking notes or whatever. Even if you make a bad call, I'm not going to call you out on it during the meeting. I'm going to let the meeting run. And then at the end, we'll have an after action and I'll say, okay, you did this great. And this, we'll work on this, and don't ever say this thing again, or I'll have to chop your head off, whatever. I'm not politically correct. It's the
No,
same
you're
language I
not.
use talking to my 9-year-old daughter. So I think it's okay. So, but you have these brand new SEAL team leaders, and they're out there just laying waste. And this happens 100% of the time. And I'll let them run 1 or 2 runs, 3 runs. And if they're not making a call, I might start yelling at them. What's the call? What are we doing? Where do we go? Blah, 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 whatever. And so that increases the amount of stress. And they're like, oh my God, I just need to shoot more targets. And if I shoot all the targets and I kill all the bad guys, then we can just get out of here. Well, that's not always the case, because you don't know what the force is. And again, your job is not to shoot. Your job is to lead. And so the next run, I will take their bullets away. They still have to carry all the bullets, all their magazines in their gear, but they get like maybe 3 rounds in their gun, and they better come back with 3 rounds in their magazine, in their gun. And so what that does is it forces them to not shoot. It forces them. So what they do, the contact happens, boom, 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 gunfire. They take cover. They want to shoot, but they know they're not supposed to now. They're certain. I have 3 rounds. I need to come back with 3 rounds. The only reason I should shoot is if everyone stops shooting, and I need to put fire down range just to keep the enemy's head down so that everyone can move and then start shooting again. So they feel, in the beginning, they feel inept. They feel like I've taken their manhood away because they are not allowed to shoot. But what happens is now they start looking at the enemy. What's the enemy doing? What's my team actually doing? What's the terrain around me? What's going on with the terrain? What decision do I need to make based off the information that I have? Now, if I see them and I'm shooting, but I can shoot, I can stop shooting, I can look around, I can figure out what the call is. Now, when it's time for them to make that call and they're stuck, I might say, what do you think about that hillside over there? I'm not telling them what the call is. They still have to process the information they have and make the call. And I might say, what about this, if they're really struggling? And then they think about it, and then they make the call. Maybe it's the right call, maybe it's not. That's not the time to make that decision. What they need to know is that their job is to not shoot, is to make decisions. And then when we move, they have to do it all over again. And we'll cover that third SEAL secret in a minute. But we finish that scenario, and then we go back and we do an after action review. What went right, what went wrong, and then they fix it. And over time, they get better. And then I give them their bullets back. But in the beginning, they get no bullets.
Interesting.
Because they're so busy shooting, they're not taking the time to look at the team, look at the enemy, look at the terrain, look at the battlefield, look at the business field, and make decisions based off of that. And so I had a really good corporate example of a client of mine, and I had like several, and I'm like, okay, settle on one. And I have a cat that wants to go outside, I think, over here. But so one of my clients, he's moving up in the corporate world. And the reason he hired me is I just put out there, hey, I'm starting a coaching business, blah, 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 whatever. And he's like, I know I need this. And the reason I'm hiring you is because I am afraid of the financial part of it scares me. That tells me that I know I need to do it. Like the financial investment. That means I know I need to do it. So he hired me, and we're working with his team and things like that. And so he's promoting a guy out of a kind of a sales role into more of a leadership position, kind of like taking over his position as he moves up in the
Yep.
organization. And the reason that that guy got promoted is because his team is running circles around all the other teams. So he's like, take what you've learned and then spread that across the other teams. And I said, okay, check. But here's the deal. That guy has formed a bond with that team. So what you need to do is either break up that team and spread the wealth to the other teams, or be on him, watch him, because what he's going to do, he's going to want to like go back to his team that he built and focus on those guys and make them even better.
Wow.
So don't allow that. Watch. This is what's going to happen. Like, he no longer needs the bullets. He needs to, like, you need to take his bullets away. He can no longer talk to that team. He can no longer put rounds down range and help them sell. He needs to help all the other teams sell.
Wow.
Step back and actually lead the team, not engage the targets.
That's where, if you think of the corporate world, right, you hear, and it doesn't matter what sector you're in, you hear the favoritism, right? So and so was promoted, and if we just use sales as the example, all the good inbound leads go to his old team, to his buddies. He only promotes, or she for that matter, only promotes. So I love the idea there is, if you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've understood from that is, as a leader, you're promoting somebody from a team, split the team, split the team up. So the individual has to spread their experience. Is that what have I summed it up?
Well, I think it's probably a little more of that. That's part of it. But, you know, the example I gave earlier where I have clients that are entrepreneurs and they've grown the team.
Yep.
And now they're like, I don't know how to lead. So let's put an actual leader in that position to lead the team. Okay, so we'll just call him a sniper. You're a really good sniper. You're good at like growing businesses from here to here. Go back and grow the business from here to here, or start another business. Step out of that role. Don't be the leader that's supposed to be making decisions for individuals, for the people in your organization. Hire someone else to do that. Bring an actual leader in. Like, if you're really good, like, a really good leader is not going to be out there making sales. He's going to be leading the team. He's not going to be a deep dive in operations. He's going to be leading the team. He's going to be like, he's going to look at the whole picture instead of just his little niche.
I know
niche,
we're
or
going
however you
to
say it.
digress here, and I'm mindful of time, but often a lot of leaders don't want to do that because there's a number of different reasons, but one of the ones that's coming to mind is they don't have that particular skill set themselves. So again, let's use sales because it's the easy one. Somebody's come up through the ops channel and they bring in a salesperson, but they've never really done sales themselves, right? So they have this fear of, oh my God, that person's going to know more than me. And then that imposter syndrome comes in,
Yep.
right? Or I'm not sure if this is any better or worse, is where they have been the top salesperson themselves, and then they're bringing somebody, and that person is never good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because they would have done it this way.
Yep. That's a whole different can of worms. And that's, I mean, again, that just goes back to ego and maturity. Do you have the maturity to let it go? Because no matter what, no one is going to do it as good as you. If you're really good at something, they're either not going to be as good as you, or if they're better than you, you have some sort of resentment.
Yeah.
You have to just be okay with people being better than you or not doing it the way that you're doing. That's where that level of maturity comes in. And that, you know, kind of going back to what you were talking about in the beginning, you have these guys that come out of the army or whatever, and they become leadership coaches or business, whatever. They don't know anything about it because they are very regimented in, like, you do it like this and do it like that. And you do what I say and you do as I say, not as I do, which is something my dad said growing up. But this is it. And there's no other way. In the SEAL teams, is there another way we can do this? How else can we do this? And so it was a different kind of leadership message that it took me a long time, you know, working with and in the corporate world. I was able to kind of see that. And I worked with the corporate world while I was in the SEAL teams, developing new technologies and things like that. So I got a little bit of a head start on
Mhm.
it. So I had a little bit of blend of both worlds, of corporate and military, while I was doing some of that other stuff. So that, I think that gave me a little bit of a head start. It gave me like a look behind the scenes of what goes on out in the real world, not in the
In
bubble
the
that I
real
live in the
world.
military, in the
Yeah.
bubble of the military. So
No, I hear you. And secret number 3, what's behind the third door wheel?
secret number 3 is OODA loop. So OODA loop is it stands for, it's another acronym. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. So what that means, it's sort of a very purposeful decision making process that we use in a gunfight. Or the guy that really came up with that acronym, he was an Air Force guy in Vietnam, and he was like, this is, kind of my decision making process when I'm, flying missions in Vietnam, and whether it's against other Russian aircraft or whatever it is. Like, so basically you orient, and again I go back to a gunfight. So we're patrolling along, bad guys start shooting at us, we take cover, we turn to return fire. As a leader and as everyone on the team, I observe what's going on around me. I observe the enemy, I observe my team, I observe the terrain. I orient myself to what's going on and where I want to go. Observe, orient. I decide what the next move needs to be, and then I act. Observe, orient, decide, act. I make a call, the whole team moves, and now after we've moved, I have a very different perspective of the battlefield. The battlefield looks incredibly different than it did 5 minutes ago when I was sitting here. But when I move over here, I see things differently. The same thing happens in
Ah,
business. The same thing happens in life. Every time you move, you maneuver on the battlefield, you maneuver on the business field, your perspective changes. You see things from different angles because angles matter. And so if I'm approaching, a corner, if I like want to peek around that corner and then there's a bunch of bad guys right there, if they see me when I peek around the corner, I don't have long to like get away. But if I approach that same corner and I'm way back here and I step way out here, but that corner is far away, I get to see the bad guys. I get to see the battlefield that I couldn't see from further away, and then I can make a better decision. Like, oh, it's going to be safe to go around that corner, or I shouldn't go around that corner. They see me, and now I have time to move and get out of dodge a lot faster than if I just walked right up to that corner and looked around it. So the angles matter. Every time you maneuver on the battlefield, you get a different perspective. So you get that new perspective. You orient yourself to what's going on. This new perspective. You observe it. You orient yourself. You decide what the next move is going to be, and then you act, and then you move again, and your perspective changes. Continues to change every time you move on the battlefield. Same thing happens in your professional life. You hire someone, you fire someone. You make a sell, or you decide not to sell to someone because they're not a good fit for your organization. All of those things are going to have repercussions. Maybe you decide not to sell, and you know that that's going to impact your bottom line, but you know it's the right decision to do because of these things that you've have already observed about that person, about that organization, about that whatever. Or you decide to fire someone based on how they were working inside your organization. There's going to be repercussions. Things are going to happen, and you're just going to have
yeah.
to deal with it. But you have to understand like what that you think about what those actions are going to be when you make that decision, because you've observed and you've oriented yourself to all the information that you have in front of you at the time. You make the decision and then you act and you maneuver. Okay, this has happened. So what do we do now? Okay, we observe, we orient, we decide and act all over again.
In your experience, like in the military, it is literally life death, right? In your world, that one mistake or presuming one thing could cost somebody their life. Okay. Thankfully, in the corporate world, in the civilian world, that is not the case, right? So do you think there's a tendency for leaders to just make assumptions. It's like that's their view. I'm sitting in my ivory tower and I look over and that's what I see. So therefore I look at that as that is the reality. And
Yes.
I don't, to your point, go and take a look from the left, the right, and what have you. Do you find in your experience in the corporate world as leaders, we tend not to really look at everything from a full 360 holistic?
Oh,
Um,
100%. And that is an analogy that I do bring up on the corporate side. You have, the leadership that live in their crystal palace, and they observe things from their myopic. They see their little people running around and doing things, and they never get out of their ivory chair and go down and see what's actually happening on the floor, on the sales floor, happening out in operations. Like, what's going on in operations? What are you guys doing? Oh, they had no idea that there was this giant rift between ops and sales, because sales is like, this is how we have to do it in order to close the deal. Operations is saying, don't do it like that, because that's not the way the system is built. And never do the two like come together and mesh. They just are opposing forces 100% of the time for almost every organization I've worked with. And so we work through like how to communicate. Again, communication is two-way. It doesn't mean you have to agree. It just means that you have to have communication in both directions. And if you are in the organization and one side is saying, let's do it like this, and you just blow them off, that's not, I mean, that's kind of two-way communication. You're saying, F you, I don't care about your opinion. We're just going to do it like this. And so you have to, if you're going to have an organization, it's best to build teams that work together. I even like the idea of competition within the organization, because in the SEAL teams, even though, we have East Coast and West Coast SEAL teams, we are always competing with one another. We have this professional animosity, or this professional rivalry between, East and West Coast, between, Army, Special Forces, and us. We have even within the teams on either coast, we have, small rivalries. We have competitions. The platoons or the task units within the SEAL teams, we're competing with one another because we want the best missions. So we're always working at, when we have that competition within the organization, everyone raises to another level, to a higher level than we would without that competition.
Yeah, that's so true. I always say healthy competitions are it's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
I just want to, before we move on, one of the thoughts that occurred to me is, these leaders in their ivory towers, tunnel vision, right? A lot of the time that tunnel vision comes from on how they're interpreting the data, and they're looking, did you make profit? Didn't you make profit? Right. And they're forming their decisions, and it's that very much that reactive mode because they don't like this month's financials that came out.
Yeah.
Right. They don't like the financials. So, oh my God, we didn't make the money. Right. Let people go. We need to now,
Right.
you need to let that money go. You need to let that money go because they want to balance the books. Now, don't get me wrong. I am totally not saying don't worry about the bottom line. You have to worry about the bottom line, right? But often, there's a global company that does it every year. The financials come in and they say, get rid, get rid, get rid, get rid. Right. So everybody has, and I was talking to a candidate the other day. She said for 16 years, Suki, around this was before Christmas. She said, I, as a VP, was one of those people telling my people, get rid, get rid, get rid. Because her boss was saying, get rid. Guess who got rid, who lost their job? And that's what she said. She said, the irony of it is, she said, every year, I know this is coming, and it's always been everybody else that I've cost cut out, ended up getting cost cutted herself. Like that short, narrow mindedness, right? Because a lot of leaders are just all they're focusing on is balancing those books.
Yep.
And they're not looking to say, well, hang on a second, why were the books, why
Yes.
did we not hit the revenue in the first place? Did we give the resources? And I know we could go on forever on that. Talk to me about number 4.
Well, let me address that really quickly.
Oh, go for it.
Oftentimes they end up firing their top salesperson, their salesperson that's making the most amount of money,
Yeah.
that's making the most amount of money, but they're making the most amount of money for the company.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind, rather than looking at what, like the whole picture, like what went right, what went wrong, why didn't we make it? They're just like, cut. They're just
Yeah.
like, cut the bottom line. or cut the top line. What's our expenses? Well, let's look at the little expenses first. What are you wasting money on? What's actually driving revenue? Where are inefficiencies in the organization? So instead of like doing the hard work, they're doing the easy work, which
Yeah.
actually will probably bite them in the butt later on.
Always does, because when you get rid of your top sales guy, now if they're in, like if they've breach and misconduct, that's not what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
But a lot of companies will get rid of their top sales guys because let's say they're earning 500,000 and they look at it and say, well, we can delegate those accounts to these two people who are only going to earn 200 amongst themselves because we're lower base salaries, we're going to reduce the
Yep.
commissions and things like that, so therefore we get X on the bottom line. But the leaders always get bonus, right? Because they're tied
Yep.
into the bottom line. What they fail to understand is that relationships just walked out that door,
Yeah.
right? That relationship is just walk. So pay the, like if you're paying someone in the example that I just gave 500,000, right? I'm hoping that they're making millions for your bottom
Yes.
line,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
and again, it comes back to that sort of animosity of, the CEO is jealous of the salesperson because they're making more money than the CEO.
Yeah.
If I was a CEO and my salesperson is making double what I'm making because they're bringing in that much revenue, awesome.
Yeah. I have a saying,
Awesome.
top person in an organization, even in my business, I'm always saying to my guys, now I'm a salesperson, right, as well. But I'm always saying to the guys, I should never ever be the top salesperson ever. That
Right.
should not be me. That should be you guys.
Yep.
Right. Whereas a lot of people look at it and say, well, if I go and close that deal myself, I don't have to pay commissions and I don't have to do this. Right. Okay. So what number are we up to?
Well, we are at number 4. This is going
Go
to go
for it.
pretty quick from here on out. So number 4 is commander's intent. And basically what that is as the leader of the organization, you should give your team left and right boundaries. So you have your organization has a mission, whatever that mission is. So for you, to find the best candidates for whatever corporate America or corporate the world, to find the best candidates for you, for your organization. That's sort of your mission, kind of in a nutshell. There are left and right boundaries that you have. Like there are like certain people that you're not going to look at. So me as the CEO of an organization, me as the leader of an organization, I'm going to say, okay, team, you can do whatever you need to do to accomplish the mission as long as you stay inside of these left and right boundaries. As long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, you can do whatever you need to do as long as it's in between these two road guards. You know what I mean? Between those lines in the road. Or in Canada, I know you guys have those rails along the side of the road in case, you hit black ice and you don't want to fall off into never land. Not that that's ever happened to me driving in Canada in the winter.
No, never.
But
Doesn't
that's
happen.
that's what commander's intent is. Like, hey, go accomplish the mission, stay within these boundaries. You have my full support as long as you're in here. What do you need? Like, just let me know what you need so I can help you accomplish that mission. That's commander's intent. And I think most organizations don't get that from the top down. They don't get that, like, hey, go get it, stay within these bounds and go execute.
Why do you think that is?
I think the leaders just don't know. A lot of times, like I said before, people are put into leadership positions based off what their resume says or how they interviewed or what school they went to or whatever, but they don't have any real world experience. They don't really know how the organization works. They don't know how things work at the ground level.
Yep.
In the SEAL teams, in the military specifically, everyone starts at the bottom, officer enlisted, and work their way up into leadership positions. Corporate world, you may just start close to the top.
Yeah.
You have no idea how to do sales, how to do operations, how to do all the minutia of the organization. You don't know what it actually takes to bring, an iPhone from idea to release.
Yeah.
Very few people do, or whatever the thing is. So when you have people that leaders don't do it because they don't know what to do. They don't know how sales works. They don't know how operations works. They are in a position based off of not experience from school, but not real world on the streets in the mud experience.
I totally agree. Now, I can think of I'm just looking at my clients, right? There's a couple that are an exception, but you're right, because they've not made a sales call, or in my world, they've not interviewed a candidate, right? They've not sat, the phone hasn't rung, and the client saying, "Hey, I need 20 people tomorrow morning." I'm thinking on the temp world, right? They haven't actually done that. And they don't take the time to go into the branches to learn that, because they think that's not their job. Now, I talked recruitment, replace that with whatever you like, whatever you like. And I think, and I know I'm sure there's people listeners that are going to be like, "Oh God, Siki, that's a load of cobblers." But salespeople, nature, just by the very nature of them, they respect leaders who have sold. I'm not saying we're top sales leaders, but salespeople respect salespeople,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Now, we could have a whole conversation about why that's right, why that's wrong. But I think there is, you're right, you have those leaders that are, I am the leader. And they have all these fancy job titles, right? And they're really proud, and so they should be, because position they are and the work they've hopefully done to get there. But they forget what it's like on a day-to-day basis for the troops
Right.
going out there.
Yeah. And or especially if they've never done it before.
Yeah.
Again, going back to, the SEAL teams, every officer that lands in a leadership position, they've been the new guy in a SEAL platoon. They've, even though you're an officer and you're in charge, that doesn't mean that you have respect immediately. You have to earn the respect of the organization. You have to earn the respect of the guys that you're leading. Even though they're in a leadership role, you have officer and you have enlisted. And on the enlisted side, I was an enlisted guy. All of my leadership experience came from other senior enlisted leaders, but also officers. But I've just been in that role of do the work the whole time, and then you get thrust into a new leadership position, and then I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea how to do this. Be brave enough to go ask for help. Put that ego away. But you have to. The only way to get real world experience is to go get real world
Yeah.
experience. You always have to start at zero. Every black belt in the world and every martial art all started as a white belt.
Yeah.
You want to be a ninja, you got to be a student first. You want to be the master, you got to be the student. So I'm an eternal student. I'm always learning. So anyway.
And last but not least, number 5.
Number 5 is decentralized command and control.
Oh, I love this one.
This is, we were talking about this before we kind of kicked off, and I'll give you a little background on this. So Zig Ziglar, who, I've lived in a bubble my entire adult life, and only in the last 4 years have I know who anyone is. I barely even knew who Tony Robbins was. I for sure didn't know who Zig Ziglar was. But about a year ago, I did a speaking event with his son, Tom Ziglar. And before the event, we came together. We got on a Zoom call. The guy who set the event up, he just wanted to make sure that there was some synergy in the messages that we were presenting. And so Tom asked me, he's like, so with COVID and with, people remote working and all this other stuff, like what lessons from the SEAL teams do you have that you can talk about that would apply to people? They just want to do remote working. They don't want to come to the office anymore or anything like that. I don't believe that everyone needs to be remote working all the time, because there is a certain culture that happens when people are working together. However, that being said, because you can build stronger, better teams when you work together. However, you should have the ability to remote work or do things independently from the organization. And, in the SEAL teams, we call that decentralized command and control. What I mean by that is I have the leadership here. I have trained my people so well to make decisions on their own. And I have that commander's intent. As long as you stay inside here, go execute the mission. Go do whatever you need to do to go get the cell or the whatever, go kill the bad guys, whatever that is. You stay in here. But before I give you the autonomy to go do that, I'm going to train you so well that I know that you're going to make the right decision. And there's going to be leaders in those sort of pods that are off doing other things. But a couple of things have to happen. You still have to have that two-way communication. Go do it. Oh, do you need, oh, hey, I need support. I ran out of whatever. Can you send someone to help support me in this way? Yes. Go execute. And I let them go do their thing. When I first joined the SEAL teams and we were doing close quarters combat, going into buildings, going into ships and clearing them out, we had what we called a hall boss. And the hall boss was the leader, and he would tell people like, hold there, move there. Okay, go 2 more doors. And he would just direct traffic. And what we found is that's the most inefficient way to clear a building, the most inefficient way to go attack the enemy. The most efficient way in business is to micromanage. So giving people the autonomy to go do the things that they need to do, you need to train them first. And I think that's where the biggest failures happen. There's like this, organizations do it halfway. They're like, okay, I believe in this decentralized command and control. Go do it. But you haven't trained them on how to do it.
Yeah.
You haven't set the expectation. You haven't given them, for sales, if you make the, what are the role playing? You haven't done enough role playing enough. Like face objections. When we're out training and we're getting ready for a deployment, you can guarantee that they're going to do a crawl, walk, run. You're going to slowly get better at what you are. They're going to add more complexity to it. But there's going to be a time where there's no right answer, where you're going to lose half the team and you're going to be, carrying guys out while you're still in the gunfight, shoot, move, and communicate, whatever it is. You're going to have epic failure. The end. You need to train to that more than once so that you know what it looks like. So when you get close to that, you were like, hey, I need help. Hey, it makes you better at your job. Most people refuse to train to failure because their ego gets in the way.
Yeah.
You can't train decentralized command and control. You can't give people the autonomy to do this stuff if you don't train them how to do it. So companies they don't train the people and say, go do it, and the people fail, or they just micromanage them and they won't give them the autonomy to go do what they need to do.
As you were saying that, I totally agree with you. You've got leaders, and it comes back to something we were saying earlier, busy being busy. If I have trained everybody to do the job within the parameters, as you said, right? I'm going to get exposed because I've got nothing else left to do. Because if I don't have this chaos, controlled chaos going on, this need, right, I may make myself obsolete. Right? So as I see leaders do it all the time, and often look at it and I say, why won't you train? Why won't you give your people all the tools they need to do the job? Right? And I'm not saying it's a cost, forget the money or they can't afford it or whatever the case may be, because that goes down a different rabbit hole. But how much of that is no, because if this chaos is sorted out, I may not be needed anymore because this team can run without me. So if it runs without me, what am I going to do?
That's a good thing. But that speaks directly to the abundance scarcity mindset.
Yeah, totally.
I've seen people do it where they're like, I know, this is my secret to holding everything together. Give that thing away. In the sort of entrepreneurial world or whatever. And, we've talked about this. Give your best secrets away.
Yeah.
Give everything away for free. Share everything. Don't hold anything back. Even though these are 5 SEAL secrets, I put them out there in the world because they're going to help someone. Who's the best person doing this right now is Alex Hermosi.
Okay.
He's putting out incredible business advice. And his thing is, he comes on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. He's like, hey, my name is Alex Hermosi. I have nothing to sell you. I have a bunch of stuff out here. I've grown companies to hundreds of millions of dollars. And his goal is for companies to go from 0 to 3 million. And then they partner with him. He takes an equity share and he grows them to 10 or 100 or whatever million. And so that's the thing that is missing in the corporate world is they're afraid of the team doing too well without them
Yeah.
micromanaging them. Where again, I have another client who he's actually being promoted because he's built such a great team to more of a strategic position. And now we're starting to work on like, okay, how to train your replacement. Like in the military, that's what we do. My job
Yep.
as a leader is to train my replacement, train myself out of a job, because that opens me up for promotion. And that's exactly what's happening to him. And it's $1 billion company. And so he's moving up to a more strategic position because of how well, I mean, he still struggles with like making, the numbers at the end of the month, and they're
Yep.
working all that stuff and all the metrics and all that stuff. But he's like, he just trains everyone. We were talking the other day, and based off of some of the decentralized command and control and leaders get no bullets, that was what I was thinking about with leaders get no bullets. Is he's stopped doing a lot of stuff and put the onus back on the team.
Yep.
He's like, I save about 14 hours a week now of my weekend that I was like doing work, because I've like taken that responsibility and given it to the team, working himself out of a job, training other people to be better at what they do. And then now he's starting to fleet up to more of a strategic position in the organization.
It completely makes sense because that's one of the things that I've done. People say to me, "Oh my God, Suki, you've achieved so much this year, and I've just got so much happening 2023." It's because the team doesn't really need me. And that's a good thing, because
Yeah.
them not needing me doesn't mean I don't have checks and balances in place. It just means I can go and do all this exciting stuff, which is the piece I'm good at.
Right.
When and I'm sure, and I know you're like this as well, right? When everything's working really well, we're like, what can we break? Just so we
Right.
have something to fix again, right? Whereas it's like, okay, this is working really well. Let it now. What else am I going to create? And that's what
Or
I've done.
even like make that better. Like it
Yeah.
works really well. How can we make it better?
Yeah.
Or how can we break it so that it doesn't break in the future?
Yeah. And it's having that, right? But a lot of people are stuck in that ego, that fear. Oh my God, if I give the team the tools and they can do this job without me, I'm going to get replaced. Because you know why? They think like that because that's how they've been cost cutting into prosperity. So
Yeah.
they've got rid of that person and divided the role and saved the money. Well, someone's going to do that to them. So it's like having kids as a parent. Your most important role is to create independent people.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It really is. I'm so conscious. I know we've gone over time here, but a little dicky bird tells me you might be coming to Canada this
Some
year.
I there's a rumor that potentially I'll be there in the April timeframe. I'm not
Nice.
sure, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely. I mean, you've got so much happening. You've got that happening. You've got your different businesses, a coaching practice that's going happening. Now, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
I would say go to first understand, kind of what the get naked mindset is. Go to 5steelsecrets.com, the number 5, or I think I also have the URL for FIVE, but the number 5 steelsecrets.com. Put your name and email in there. I'll send you a PDF of what these 5 secrets are. Never quit, accept failure, kill mediocrity, expose your fears, and do the work. Reply to that email, because that comes from my direct email account. Reply to that email and say, hey, can we have a conversation about working together? Maybe a speaking, on a stage or in an event that we're putting on, and we can start having that conversation. I would say that's number 1. I'm here on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty easy to Google. I've done well over 400 podcast interviews in the last 2 years. So I get around, I guess. That's what she said anyway.
And if all that fails, ping me and I'll ping you.
Done.
Right?
Easy enough.
Fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Suki, thank you for having me on here. I appreciate you. And again, thanks for having me on your
You're
platform.
welcome. Thanks ever so much. And I will speak to you soon.